You're live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Austrian artists welcome Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Vienna with rendition of Vande Mataram. PM Modi's first Indian PM to visit Austria in almost 40 years will hold delegation-level talks with Chancellor Karl Nehammer. US President Joe Biden promises air defense system for Ukraine as he opens NATO summit in Washington. NATO chief Stoltenberg says outcome of Ukraine conflict will shape global security for decades to come. Texas faces double whammy as heat wave adds to the woes after tropical storm Beryl forced power outages. President Joe Biden issues federal emergency disaster declaration. 7 people killed in the storm so far. Wonder Kid Yamal scripts history as Spain edge France 2-1 to reach Euro 2024 final. Well, on to the details now. After concluding a fruitful visit to Russia, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Austria's capital in Vienna. PM Modi was received at the airport by Austria's Minister of Foreign Affairs. This is the first visit of an Indian Prime Minister in over 40 years. Austria is India's steadfast and reliable partner, and both countries share the ideals of democracy and pluralism. Upon arriving at the hotel in Vienna, PM Modi was greeted by members of the Indian diaspora. Children enthusiastically presented their artworks to him, showcasing their excitement and admiration. Additionally, members of the Indian community gathered around him, waving Indian flags and chanting Modi, Modi as they greeted him. This enthusiastic welcome highlighted the strong support and connection felt by the Indian community in Vienna towards the Prime Minister during his visit. Prime Minister Modi was greeted by Austrian artists singing Vande Mataram. PM Modi's 2-day visit to Austria is the first by an Indian Prime Minister in over 4 decades. PM Modi will meet Austria's President Alexander Van der Bellen and will hold delegation-level talks with Chancellor Karl Nehammer. The visit is expected to help the two nations broaden the scope of their partnership and address issues of regional and global importance. Well, in an important milestone in India-Austria partnership, the Indian Prime Minister was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer for a private engagement on Tuesday. This was the first meeting between the two leaders. The Austrian Chancellor posted a photo of him and PM Modi on the social media platform X and wrote, "It's an honor to welcome PM Modi to Austria. Austria and India are friends and partners." Nehammer further wrote, he looks forward to the political and economic discussions between the two nations during PM Modi's visit. Prime Minister Modi thanked the Austrian Chancellor for the warm welcome and said he looks forward to the discussions as well. PM Modi said, "Our nations will continue working together to further global good." And a look now at Prime Minister Modi's itinerary in Vienna. DD India's Gautam Roy reports for more.
An Indian Prime Minister landing on Austrian soil after over 40 years, when the two nations are also marking 75 years of their friendship.
The visit is going to give great dynamism to this partnership. It's going to give the high-level political visibility that this relationship requires. And it's a relationship that has been performing reasonably well. And with this visit, we expect it to gain dynamism and content.
The substantial part of Prime Minister Modi's Austria visit will be unfolding on Wednesday, where he'll not only call on Austria's President Alexander van der Bellen at the Hofburg Palace, but also hold delegation-level talks with his Austrian counterpart, Federal Chancellor Karl Nehammer, at the Federal Chancellery after receiving a ceremonial reception. The day will also see the Prime Minister meeting key Austrian influencers. But another highlight for Wednesday will be the Made in Austria-India CEOs meeting, where an effort will be made to give further impetus to the business ties between the two nations, including their respective startup ecosystems.
Indian companies that are operating in Austria, and there are several Austrian companies operating in India. And as part of the program, there will be an interaction with Indian and Austrian CEOs to try and see how we can move this partnership forward, especially in niche technologies, clean technologies, and also in terms of bringing some of our startups together. There is a good groundwork has already been laid, and what we need is a quantum leap in this partnership, and this is what I think this visit will succeed in doing.
Vienna is also the city of Western classical music, which was the home to great composers such as Mozart and Beethoven, among others. And he also got a melodic reception from Vienna University Philharmonic, whose director is also an Indian diaspora member. Clearly, there are multiple elements to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Austria visit, which have the potential of taking its ties with India to greater heights in several aspects of the relationship.
In just the last few months, India and Austria have added new elements to their already extensive relations, such as a comprehensive migration and mobility agreement, as well as an India-Austria startup bridge. But there are many more areas that are still left to be fully explored, be it semiconductors or AI, advanced telecommunications, aerospace, and much progress can be expected to be made in this historic Austria visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. With camera person Rakesh Singh, Gautam Roy, Vienna, Austria, DD India.
Well, during Prime Minister Modi's Austria visit, the two nations are also looking to deepen their cooperation in the tech and startup sectors. DD India's Gautam Roy has spoken with those involved in this effort on both the sides of which they recently put into action. India-Austria Startup Bridge is a major initiative. Listen in.
Technology is an area where India and Austria can really take their cooperation really far. And the India-Austria Startup Bridge is one new initiative that has taken place. We're trying to find out more about it. We have with us Kambis Kohonsa Vayaga with us. He's the representative as far as startups is concerned for the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. Thank you for speaking to DD India. Kambis, what can you tell us about this initiative, and to what extent are there plans to take it forward as well? Because right now it's in a very nascent stage.
Yeah, great to be here. The initiative has different aspects to it. So several months ago, we had our biggest tech festival here in Austria, the Vienna Up, and we had a huge Indian delegation, the biggest of all the international countries. And the goal was to bring Indian startups to Austria, but also vice versa, bring Austrian startups to India. Apart from that, we have a strong focus on universities. So we want to share research and development, focus on spin-offs in Austria and India as well. And then again, having this matchmaking between market access, know-how, talent, and capital.
Wonderful. We have Shankar as well with us. Shankar Reddy is a founding member of Indian Professional Network Association in Vienna in Austria. Shankar, what can you tell us about the scope of the kind of collaboration that India and Austria can have in the field of technology and, of course, the startup ecosystems?
India and Austria are growing more and more in terms of diversification. And very recent times, we have seen the mobility agreement signed between India and Austria, wherein which Austria is purely looking and focusing for the highly skilled employees to be placed in Austrian startups and Austrian companies, wherein which Austrian authorities and Austria as a whole is also looking for the Indian skill and Indian, talent to flourish this market.
So it seems to be all about opening up new avenues for collaboration to ensure that not only the fact that there is market access which is being sought in a cross manner, but also there are openings and there are future prospects for professionals as well in both the countries. With camera person Rakesh Kumar, Gautam Roy in Vienna, Austria, DD India.
Well, hundreds of moviegoers have been packing theatres in Germany to enjoy a little taste of India. The annual Indo-German Film Week showcasing the best of Bollywood on the silver screen, with many in the Indian diaspora taking along German friends to introduce them to the magic of Indian cinema. From Berlin, Trent Murray has the story.
In the Babylon Cinema Berlin, a big burst of Bollywood. This is the annual Indo-German Film Week, a celebration of Indian cinema and culture. For Indians living in Germany, the festival gives a chance to showcase what makes Bollywood special to their European friends.
It's more about the storytelling, it's more about the happiness and, the unity in culture. Like, we are, different part of India has so much in the cultural difference, but still, it's still very unique, and how we all are connected despite of different languages, and we have different folk style. So they come to know that it's not just the sari, which is a dressing style, or not just, the Punjabi dance, but there are so many forms of dances.
It's about their music, it's about their songs, it's about their costume. It's about their emotions, because India is a sentimental country. It's a little emotional, and their emotions are all about love, care, affection. So that's my kind of vision, my kind of perspective for it. So yeah, that's what I tell them. It's a mixture of life.
Well, India has well and truly established itself as one of the powerhouses of global cinema, producing well over 1,500 feature films every year. Increasingly, Bollywood's success on the silver screen is coming from a surging interest amongst international audiences.
This is now the 12th year in a row the Film Week has been held. Festival organiser Steven Ottenbruch says looking beyond the big-name titles is what keeps crowds coming back.
We now try to concentrate on alternative films, like premieres, which are from artists, and then regional films from Marathi cinema, from Gujarati cinema, from Malayalam cinema. And that's how we always create the mix for the festival.
Over 10 days, crowds across the capital can immerse themselves in the magic of India, with more than 30 films being shown on the big screen. Enjoying the sights and sounds of the subcontinent, right here in the heart of Germany's biggest city. Trent Murray for DD India, Berlin.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. A fresh encounter broke out between security forces and terrorists in the higher reaches of Doordarshan district of Jammu and Kashmir on Tuesday. Authorities roped in the National Investigation Agency, deployed special forces and widened their search to cover vast areas in Udhampur and Kathua districts. The forces are searching for the perpetrators of the deadly attack on an army patrol in Kathua district, in which 5 soldiers were martyred. The flood situation in Assam has improved as intensity of rains decreased in the past few days. 7 persons lost their lives on Tuesday, taking the death toll up to 79 this year. Brahmaputra in some major areas and 5 other rivers are flowing above the danger mark. Over 2,700 villages under 90 revenue circles in 26 districts are still reeling under floodwaters, affecting over 17.17 lakh people. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Amid chaos over Biden's presidential bid, Trump expected to unite the party at the Republican National Convention next week. BCCI announces Gautam Gambhir as the new head coach of India. And in Wimbledon, Alcaraz fights back to reach Wimbledon semi, Sinner toppled by Medvedev.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on, well, leaders are gathering in Washington for the NATO summit as the organization celebrates its 75th anniversary. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg urged the leaders of the Transatlantic Security Alliance to maintain support for Ukraine in its war against Russia's invasion, declaring that the outcome of the conflict would shape global security for decades. The centerpiece of the NATO summit was said to be new commitments of military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, as well as a bridge for that war-torn country to join the 32-member alliance. And NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg announced to have placed an order for Stinger anti-aircraft missiles worth almost $700 million in the name of several member states on Tuesday. Stoltenberg was addressing a gathering of defense industry leaders on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Washington. The last contract for Stinger missiles was awarded in May 2022 when the U.S. Army contracted $625 million worth of the anti-aircraft missiles to replenish stocks sent to Kyiv, as it is in hot demand in Ukraine, where they have used it in their fight against Russia. The NATO order for Stingers will keep the production line running through 2029.
Last year, the NSPA, the Support and Procurement Agency, agreed contracts worth over $11 billion for ammunition and capabilities. And just today, the NSPA signed new multinational contracts for Stinger missiles worth almost $700 million.
Meanwhile, bilateral meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba led to the renewed support for Ukraine. Both the leaders met at the State Department during the three-day NATO summit in Washington, D.C.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is, as always, a great pleasure to have my colleague, my friend, Dmytro Kuleba here as we start the NATO summit, a summit that will further strengthen Ukraine's ties to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and its path to membership. We've done a lot of work in recent weeks and recent months on that, and I think you'll see a very strong package emerge from this summit for Ukraine. More broadly, we've been working closely together to make sure that as things move forward, Ukraine has what it needs to stand strongly on its own feet, militarily, economically, democratically. And we're on a very good pathway to do just that.
We seem to be set before a very, very important gathering of leaders. Thank you for working diligently on on reaching some of very important agreements on air defense and for the assistance that NATO will be providing to Ukraine. This is all essential, and I'm looking forward to continuing our partnership and friendship and cooperation.
Well, it's the 75th anniversary of the alliance, with support for Ukraine topping the agenda. But the president is fighting for political survival after a poor debate performance. Biden is struggling to convince Democrats that he's still mentally fit to run for re-election. Kate Fisher reports for more from Washington. Take a look.
As Joe Biden welcomed delegates to the summit in Washington, D.C., much of the focus was actually on him. At aged 81, he's older than the NATO alliance, an alliance that he hailed, and he pledged that Ukraine can and will stop Russia. The speech was forceful and clear, and so any of his critics expecting to see a stumble like those that he had during the presidential debate would have been disappointed. But this wasn't evidence that he can handle a high-pressure situation. This was scripted, and he read off the teleprompter throughout. He is hoping that this NATO summit will be a chance for him to turn the page on a global stage to show not just the American people but the world that he is capable of doing this job and being re-elected to do the job. But it is distracting from the work that NATO actually wants to do and what the leaders are here in Washington, D.C. to achieve. Now, domestically, Joe Biden has survived so far. A handful of Democratic lawmakers have come out publicly and said that they think he needs to stand aside and pull out of the presidential race. But on Tuesday, there were closed-door meetings of House and Senate Democrats where this topic was discussed. And when they finished, nobody left those meetings. No leadership in the House or the Senate left those meetings calling for him to go. They were all backing Joe Biden. Perhaps the biggest test this week, then, that he's going to face, having survived those meetings, is on Thursday at the NATO summit, when he will be giving an unscripted press conference, which will be the first time that reporters have a chance to ask him questions face to face since that disastrous debate. In Washington, Kate Fisher reporting for DD India.
Well, Donald Trump is expected to try and move on from his recent convictions and unite the party at the Republican National Convention next week. It comes at a time when Democrats are in chaos over whether or not President Biden is still fit to run as its party's nominee. Mitch McCann reports for more.
The US Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump has at least some immunity from prosecution for official acts taken while he was in office. And Judge Juan Merchan in the New York hush money case will have to decide whether that ruling impacts Trump's recent conviction for falsifying business records. Donald Trump was found guilty of 36 criminal counts at the end of May, becoming the first former US president to be convicted of a crime. It's possible he could be fined, sentenced to probation, or imprisoned for up to 4 years. The sentencing has now been moved back and won't take place until at least September, while the matter is being considered. That means it will no longer happen before next week's Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. It's there Trump's team will try and move on from the convictions and are likely to try and unite the party behind the presumptive candidate. And while Democrats are in chaos over the future of President Joe Biden and whether or not he should be replaced on the ticket, the Republican Party has released a schedule for a series of events taking place at the convention, including a number of receptions, lectures, and presentations. It's expected that Donald Trump will officially become the Republican nominee at the end of the convention. I'm Mitch McCann in New York, reporting for DD India.
Well, U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday declared Hurricane Beryl as a major disaster in Texas. This means the state has been granted a federal emergency to speed the recovery efforts in 121 countries affected by the storm. With federal emergency in place, the state authorities would be able to mobilize federal resources to help with life-saving or life-sustaining activities. Tropical storm Beryl barreled into Texas on Monday, damaging NRG Stadium, home of the Houston Texans, and leaving over 2 million residents without power. Meanwhile, the National Weather Service said that the remnants of Beryl were creating favorable environment for tornadoes along the Ohio River Valley in southern Indiana and northern Kentucky on Tuesday afternoon and evening.
The president then called the lieutenant governor of Texas to ensure that Texans are getting the resources they need and deserve following this devastating storm. On the call, the president raised the need for a major disaster declaration and immediately approved it while on the call when the lieutenant governor requested it.
Well, after Hurricane Beryl knocked out power to a large portion of Texas, millions now face brutally hot conditions. Some 2.2 million homes and businesses were without electricity as temperatures were reaching above 100 degrees Fahrenheit midday on Tuesday. Several gas stations in Houston, the state's largest city and the fourth largest city in the country, were closed on Tuesday because they had no electricity, with residents forced to wait in long lines at the remaining open gas stations. Oil and gas companies are meanwhile making efforts to restart operations. And on to some sports news now. Spain struck twice in 5 minutes in a pulsating first half to secure a 2-1 win over France in the Euro semi-finals. The record-breaking goal from teenager Lamine Yamal and a Dani Olmo effort propelled them into the Euro 2024 final. The Spaniards will now face the winners on Wednesday's match between England and Netherlands in the final in Berlin on Sunday as they hunt a record-breaking 4th European crown. And former Indian opener Gautam Gambhir has been appointed head coach of the country's cricket team. He succeeded former teammate Rahul Dravid in what is considered one of the most challenging jobs in the game. Dravid, who ended his tenure guiding India to the T20 World Cup last month, opted not to apply for the job again, paving the way for Gambhir's elevation to the role. And in Wimbledon, defending champion Carlos Alcaraz returned to the semi-finals with an enthralling comeback on Tuesday. Having taken his Grand Slam tally to 3 at the French Open last month, Alcaraz pushed on in his quest to retain a major trophy for the first time and cement his big league status by rallying past American Tommy Paul. Jannik Sinner's wore heavily back to succeed at the grass-court Grand Slam, but the ailing 22-year-old came crashing down to earth against 5th seed Daniil Medvedev. Sinner put up a brave fight after a timeout due to illness, but the Italian was unable to prevent a 6-7, 6-4, 7-6, 2-6, 6-3 defeat. Jasmine Paoloni cruised to a 6-2, 6-1 victory at Wimbledon to set up a meeting with Croatian Dona Vekic, who ended the extraordinary run of qualifier Lulu Sun. Vekic had serious doubts about the durability of her knees after surgery in 2021 and considered quitting, but she now finds herself in a maiden semi-final on the grandest stage. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India.